we begin our story in ancient Greece. Like almost all countries at the time, the Greece of antiquity was not a unified nation with defined borders and a single government, but a loose confederacy of distinct city-states, each with their own identity and culture. The Athenians from the city of Athens, home of debating philosophers and the beginnings of democratic rule. The Spartans from the city of Sparta, known for their well-trained warriors and plain speaking. Corinthians from the city of Corinth, famous for their wealth gained from trade that went through the two major ports under their control, and many others, each contributing to a broader Greek identity. Sometimes these city-states fought each other, sometimes they cooperated. But each state proudly celebrated their identity and considered themselves free to choose their own actions and make their own mistakes, facing the consequences of their deeds honourably. While the Greek city-states did not worship a single ruler, each respected universal principles that held the states together in organic balance. To live well, to respect and pursue excellence, and to face one's fate, whatever it may be, with honour and zeal. To the Greeks, this was law. Principles for living that were obvious and universal. And the greatest and clearest glorification of these principles was in a grand event held every 4 years in a small town on the southwest of Greece called Olympia. This event is now known to us as the Olympic Games. And during this one event, people from all over Greece came together to celebrate as men from each of the city-states competed in running races, javelin and discus throwing contests, and other feats of strength, stamina and skill. In the lead up to the games, a so-called Olympic truce was agreed, and all fighting was put on hold so that athletes could travel between the city-states in safety. When the athletes competed and trained, they were naked, both for practical purposes, exercising in the heat, and to display their idealistic athletic bodies. The Greek word for naked is gymnos, and this word is the basis of the word gymnasion. In ancient Greece, a gymnasion was a school for young men, the forerunner of our modern gyms. In the gymnasion, athletes would train naked and learn from wise philosophers. The renowned philosopher Socrates taught at one of these schools in Athens. Socrates was famous for asking questions. Even though he was very intelligent, rather than trying to look clever, Socrates actually tried to look stupid. He asked questions as if he was a beginner, exposing his ignorance and foolishness. Instead of assuming he knew everything, Socrates assumed he knew nothing and kept asking questions. He was prepared to be wrong in order to discover the right answers. This way of discovering new knowledge is known as the Socratic method, named after Socrates. We know about Socrates because of a student of his, named Plato, who wrote many books where Socrates was the main character. As well as telling us about Socrates, Plato introduced to us the idea of an ultimate place where the perfected versions of all things exist. He believed that our world is only a shadow and a foretaste of the perfect world that could be. Through daily action and attention, we can bring our world closer to this ideal form. In 480 BC, the Emperor Xerxes commanded the largest army that had ever been brought together. The Persian army was an army of armies, all the major Eastern nations, each with their own cultures and languages, all bowing to one man, Xerxes the Great. With this vast and diverse army, Xerxes began travelling from the east to the west, seeking to swallow all people into his all-encompassing empire of many cultures and races, until he came to Greece. The ancient Greek storyteller Herodotus wrote about this in his book on the Persian Wars. In the story, Xerxes speaks to Demaratus, a Greek king who was exiled from his home and ended up fighting in the Persian army. "Demaratus, it is my pleasure at this time to ask these certain things which I wish to know. Thou art a Greek, and as I hear from other Greeks with whom I converse no less than from thine own lips, thou art a native of a city which is not the meanest or the weakest in their land. Tell me therefore, what thinkest thou? Will the Greeks lift a hand against us? Mine own judgment is that even if all the Greeks and all the barbarians of the West were gathered together in one place, they would not be able to abide my onset, not being really of one mind. But I would fain know what thou thinkest hereof. Demaratus responds, Want has at all time been a fellow dweller with us in our land, while valour is an ally with whom we have gained by dint of wisdom and strict laws. Her aid enables us to drive out want and escape thraldom. Come what may, they will never accept thy terms, which would reduce Greece to slavery, and further, they are sure to join battle with thee. If 1,000 of them should take the field, they will meet thee in battle, and so with any number, be it less than this, or be it more. When Xerxes heard this response, he laughed and answered, What wild words, Demaratus! 1,000 men join battle with such an army as this? Come then, wilt thou, who wert once, as thou sayest, their king, engage to fight this very day with 10 men? I think not. If each of them be a match for 10 of my soldiers, I may well call upon thee to be a match for 20. So wouldst thou assure the truth of what thou hadst now said. But if you Greeks, who vaunt yourself so much, are in truth men like those who I have seen about my court, as thyself, Demaratus, and others with whom I am wont to converse, if, I say, you are really men of this sort and size, how is the speech that thou hast uttered more than a mere empty boast? For, to go to the very verge of likelihood, how could 1,000 men, or 10,000, or even 50,000, particularly if they were all alike free and not under one lord, how could such a force, I say, stand against an army like mine? Let them be 5,000, and we shall have more than 1,000 men to each one of theirs. If indeed, like our troops, they had a single master, their fear of him might make them courageous beyond their natural bent. Or they may be urged by lashes against an enemy which far outnumbered them. But left to their own free choice, assuredly they will act differently. For mine own part, I believe that if the Greeks had to contend with the Persians only, and their numbers were equal on both sides, the Greeks would find it hard to stand their ground. Demaratus answered, For mine own self, I pretend not to cope with 10 men, nor with 2. Nay, had I the choice, I would rather not fight even with 1. But, if need appeared, or if there were any great cause urging me on, I would contend with right good will against one of those persons who boast themselves a match for any 3 Greeks. So likewise the Greeks, when they fight singly, they are as good men as any in the world, and when they fight in a body, are the bravest of all. For though they be free men, they are not in all respects free. The law is the master whom they own, and this master they fear more than thy subjects fear thee. Whatever he commands, they do, and his commandment is always the same. It forbids them to flee in battle, whatever the number of their foes, and requires them to stand firm, to either conquer or die. If in these words, O king, I seem to thee to speak foolishly, I am content from this time forward evermore to hold my peace. Xerxes, I pray that all may turn out according to thy wishes. And Xerxes was not angry with him at all, but only laughed and sent him away with words of kindness. All over the Greek world, people loved these stories and teachings, and along with others they formed the basis of the Greek identity, a narrative that people could witness, learn, and then participate in, embodying the principles that would bring them together organically, while tying them to a heritage of athletes, warriors, heroes, philosophers, and kings.